Welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for Women and Wealth, how to consider what matters most for creating a financial plan. My name is Kathy Churn, and I am a consumer health librarian at East Brunswick Public Library. Today's program is brought to you by the library's Just for the Health of It initiative to promote community health and wellness. Our speaker today is Bradley Basker, financial advisor at Morgan Stanley in Boston. Bradley works with clients to help build a sustainable financial plan to achieve their financial and life goals and manage their assets for them. He is licensed in New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Florida, and Texas. Bradley has already delivered free webinars focused on financial wellness and literacy to companies, synagogues, schools, alumni networks, and public libraries, and enjoys giving back to his communities in this way. Please be aware that this talk is being recorded. Please keep your microphones muted and your webcams off. The recording will be available at ebpl.org/YouTube. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. Our speaker will answer questions at the end of the talk. And without further ado, I'll turn things over to Bradley.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to everyone for being here. It's great to be back for yet another seminar. And I think this month it's an interesting one because we're going to talk about women and wealth and what to consider when creating a financial plan. But in light of Mother's Day, right, we thought it was an appropriate topic, and I'm really grateful to have, the many of you that are here today and those of you that are watching on demand. So why do we focus on a topic, geared towards women? Because women continue to be an underserved community when it comes to financial education and literacy, and I've made it a priority to find ways to educate more women who are actively seeking to be brought up to speed on all things personal finance and money. Now, while I myself am not a woman, I was raised by one, I'm married to one, and I have a number of female clients myself, all of whom have helped inform the content we'll be discussing here today. So thank you again for being here, and I hope you pick up a few tidbits that'll help you get on the right path to financial freedom and independence. So for today's agenda, we're going to start off by talking about women and their unique financial needs. Then we'll help you think about your life goals in a concrete way and review the strategy, and your efforts to date and help you understand some key steps you might want to consider as your strategies evolve. Then finally, we'll talk briefly about how a relationship, with an advisor might make sense if that's something that you're seeking out, whether you're looking to sort of accelerate your financial journey or just starting out. And so to be respectful of everyone's time, as Kathy mentioned, I'd like to request everyone holds their questions till the end. I'm going to go through a number of, pieces of content. And we can definitely dive into any of them in more granular detail when we get to the end line. So to get started, women are a powerful economic force, but yet they face important challenges. And so let's dive into some of the positive developments of recent years. In 2020, the predicted global income of women was expected to reach $24 trillion. So clearly there's a nicely sized pie to be had. Now, what should we be doing with all of that money? In 2019, sales generated by women-owned businesses in the U.S. were $1.9 trillion. So once again, women are really making a dent in the ownership space and proving to become an indispensable part of the economy, right? Maybe 50, 60, 70 years ago, you couldn't say that was the same way. Now we're seeing women are really becoming an integral part of the economy and making incredible contributions to what's going on, economy-wide. So women are bringing in more money than ever before, leading more businesses than ever before. So what can we do with that information? So an important first step in managing your wealth is taking a step back and considering your personal life goals and what you care about most. So here are some questions that might help you explore the things that really matter to you. Right? Identifying your priorities enables you, along with your advisor, if you have one, to develop a long-term financial strategy that helps you achieve your objectives. Now, it may be useful to formulate a mission statement or a statement of your goals, right? What are you trying to get out of your life, both financially, but also just in general? Are you trying to retire by a certain age? Are you trying to give back to a certain charity, right? So when you create that mission statement, it gives you a framework that will help direct how you move forward and how effective your wealth management strategy is over time. It also might be useful to include family in the process of defining what you value, how you define wealth, what role you want to play in your community, and what you want for your descendants in terms of leaving a legacy. So just some questions here on the slide for you to think about. I'll name a few. Where do you see yourself in 1, 5, 10, 20 years? Start to tier your goals in terms of short-term, medium-term, long-term to help set those priorities. That's the first thing we do, when I speak to a client, or even when they're not a client, I just say, tell me about yourself. I say, what are your short-term goals? Anything from the next 0 to 2 years. What are your medium-term goals? Anything 2 to 8 years or so. And what are your long-term goals? Because you can't figure out how to get somewhere if you don't know where you're going. So think about what those goals are. Another question, right? What does it mean to you to have wealth? Like, think about what that future might hold. If you had a really comfortable financial life, what would that mean to you to have that kind of wealth? And then finally, another question you could ask is, what do you envision retirement to look like for you? Are you going to have to cut back on some of your lifestyle choices, or are you going to augment them or add to them? So think about, does that look like you living in Florida with a second home and you come back to the Northeast when it's winter? Or does your retirement look like something like being in the same neighborhood as your grandkids and your children, et cetera? So think about those questions. Whatever it is that you want to get out of your life, it's important to identify that and then put a strategy in place to help achieve those goals. Now, another critical step in defining value and developing your personal action plan is to get yourself organized. Goals are great to have, but if you can't establish a sound current state of affairs, it's going to be pretty difficult to getting on the right path to achieving those goals. A well-ordered financial house allows you to access documents when you need them, to manage your wealth effectively, and to prepare for changes in your circumstances that limit or expand your role in financial decision-making. And when you can gather that vital financial information about your family and taking inventory of your critical documents, it's going to help you get a clearer picture of what you own, what you owe, and how well you're protected against certain risks. So on this slide, you can see some of the documents you may want to include in your family records organizer. So personal information, tax returns, insurance policies, beneficiaries, a will. It all matters, and it shouldn't be a mad scramble to find it when you need it most. So if you're someone that just says, I figure it's somewhere in like the office in our house, we'll figure it out when we get there, I would tell you, take some time, do a little bit of a spring cleaning, get a sort of a filing cabinet or something, or some digital folder on your Gmail that just, everything's in one place. And when you need it most, like I said, you're not scrambling to find it. Now, money is a complex and emotionally charged topic. I've done a lot of seminars. I don't know if we did one for this library on the psychology of money. But it's a complex and emotionally charged topic, and seeking professional advice might help you avoid common pitfalls and devise more effective strategies for managing your wealth. Despite their growing economic power, as I said in the earlier slides, nearly 60% of women defer big financial decisions to their significant others, and over 95% of women do not seek the advice of a financial advisor when going through a divorce, which seems crazy, right? Your life's sort of going up into turmoil. There's a lot of things. You got to have your attorney, your accountant, your financial advisor, but many women do not even pursue that kind of advice. They kind of go at it alone, and that can be very overwhelming. So you want to work with the professionals and these trusted advisors that can be, a willing sounding board for you and willing to collaborate with you to create a wealth plan that addresses your specific goals. Not sort of someone that's going to put you in some sort of algorithm and say, based on everyone that looks and sounds like you, this is what it is. You want someone that's going to be able to customize exactly what you want to get out of your life and put a plan in place to achieve that. Now, the key is to find someone you trust who communicates clearly and is both open and responsive to your concerns. Right? So again, think about anything. Same thing with finding a doctor or a physical trainer, anything like that. You want to find someone you like and trust, who knows what they're doing, is going to hear you out and not just sort of pontificate about what things should be versus what's specific to your situation. Now, when we talk about wealth planning, we're often looking 10, 20, 30 years into the future towards the cost of education for our children or even grandchildren. We're looking at retirement, long-term health care, and so on. But wealth planning is also very much about your lifestyle today and its impact and influence on your future. So with this in mind, I'm going to stop here, and I'm not going to sort of ask anyone to volunteer, but I'm going to ask you to take out a pen and paper and do a quick exercise. On a piece of paper, what I'd like everyone to do is list all of the people that you care about and provide support to in your life, both emotional and monetary. This could include family, extended family, causes you care about, employees if you're a business owner. So I want to give you guys all 60 seconds. I want you to write down everyone in your life that you care about and is important to you and that you provide emotional and monetary support to. I'm just going to shut up for a minute and give you 60 seconds to write that down. All right, another 30 seconds. All right. So hopefully everyone has their list. And, I'm thinking, how many of you listed a spouse or children or parents? The better question is, how many of you put yourself on that list? Because if you left yourself off, you're not alone. Many women spend so much time caring for others that they forget to make themselves a priority. We believe here at Morgan Stanley that it's critical for women and men as well to think about their own goals and then put a strategy in place to achieve those goals, right? We all want to be selfless and give to others, but at the end of the day, the same way that when you're on a plane, they tell you, put your mask on first before helping others. It's the same thing, right? If you are always caring about other people and neglect yourself, you're going to sort of look back and say, listen, I helped a lot of people, which is a great thing, but did I really take care of myself and live the most fulfilling life that I could? And so when you start to sort of think about what your goals are and what matters to you, you'll be in a much better position to help those that matter to you. You'll be in a better state of mind. You'll be less stressed. You'll be more comfortable, and that'll enable you to live the life that you want to live. So let's think about you for now. Consider what your unique goals are. Let's talk about some of those goals you might have for your family and for yourself. Do you know how much you need to achieve those goals? For example, let me go back. For example, do you know what it'll cost to educate your children or your grandchildren when the time comes, right? That's a big expense. The fact is that while long-term average inflation rate is about 3% or so, college costs are rising at an average of 5 to 8% per year. In 2015, the average cost of 1 year at a private 4-year nonprofit college was $33,650. By 2033, that same year of tuition is expected to be $80,000. We're talking about almost 2.5 times. Another thing is that lifespans are increasing. So the question is, do you have a plan to take care of your parents or in-laws as they age? You might need one. Why is that? Since 40% of caregivers work full-time. Providing home healthcare services for loved ones is becoming more and more common, and it can be very expensive for families to absorb. Costing over $52,000 a year on average. Compare this to the national average cost for a private room in a nursing home facility, right? We're talking about, an assisted living facility is no bargain at $47,000 at $64 a year. So it's easy to see the importance of health insurance and having adequate savings to be able to provide proper care for yourself and those you love. Being able to care for an ill, disabled, or elderly family member can be very rewarding work, but it can also have financial and emotional implications on your life. So you want to be prepared for that so you're not sort of blindsided when that day comes. Now, if you're weighing this decision about whether or not to take a more active role, consider these questions. Number one, if you have to take care of a loved one, would you be able to continue working? If not, how would you replace your income, and how would the time you spend away from your job affect your chances for promotion? What role will your siblings play if you have one, right? Let's say you're taking care of parents. Are you going to split it up? Is one person going to be responsible for the finances? One person is going to be responsible for taking care of them, right? Having that conversation. I've found, right, talking to other people, I've been in a similar situation, and even, with my mom, who's got an aging mother, and she's got 3 sisters, right? They all kind of split it up, and they work together to help make, when they say many hands make light work. Another question, right? Have you thought about purchasing long-term care insurance for your parents? This is an option that you also might want to consider to ensure that you don't have to deplete your savings if indeed they need long-term care. But overall, the best approach is to plan ahead and involve all appropriate family members in a discussion about caregiving. Now, if you own your own business with other family members, perhaps some of you might be business owners, or if you'd like to pass it along to other members of your family in an orderly way, you need to plan for that as well ahead of time so that you can transition, in a smooth way. Another question, right? Will your investments that you have in the market of some kind provide a dependable stream of income in the future, right? This is one of the most important reasons why you have to have a long-term plan, because you can do what you want to do to help ensure that your savings are where you need them to be when that time comes for retirement, or when you want to buy that sort of retirement home, or when you need to pay for the care of the loved ones. So you want to make sure that sort of that long-term savings goals are met based on sort of what you think you're going to need in the future, building in a cushion in case perhaps some things go a little bit differently than you expected, and making sure that you have some left over. Now, the examples we've discussed so far are only a few of the many goals you might have as a mother, daughter, sister, wife, employer, or member of the community. Your own comprehensive list of personal goals might look something like this. So when I work with clients, I often start with this kind of conversation as I meant, right? I try to understand their needs and goals, which is paramount to establishing a wealth strategy. Because once you know what you'd like to do and where you'd like to go, we can start to build that roadmap of how to get there. So this is a really important thing that we really make sure every client understands. We don't just say we're saving indefinitely. We're saving with the intent of having a goal ready to be achieved, whether that's being able to retire for 40 years comfortably, or like I said, leaving a legacy for your kids, or being able to give a charitable contribution to an organization, right? Think about all those different goals, have those in place. Let's think about where you are today and what can we do to achieve those goals in the most probable way. Now, the things that you envision for yourself, whether in your personal life or your financial life, are all important and unique ingredients to that established wealth strategy. Now, your wealth strategy really starts to take shape when you begin to think about the rest of the people on your list in terms of potential goals. We sort of talked about what are the things that matter to you, but now you got to start to expand that a little bit more. So for example, a desire to care for your children might translate to saving for college tuition, or adding your parents to the mix might involve planning for long-term care, or caring for your employees might mean establishing a corporate retirement plan like a 401k or a 403b, and so on and so forth. So after establishing where you want to be and when, your short-term and long-term goals, then you're going to start to think about, how can I help achieve the things that I want to achieve for the other people in my life? Now, it's a comprehensive wealth management strategy when you start to think about you and then all the concentric circles around there that'll help you sort of get to the finish line across the board. Now, how can you get specific about these goals, right? It's all great to have these goals, but how do you actually put together a tactical plan to achieve those goals? So let's start with the goals you have for you and for your children and grandchildren, right? You probably want to establish 529 plans to save for education expenses. For those of you that, aren't familiar with 529 plans, they're essentially a tax-advantaged savings plan designed to encourage saving for college costs. You and your family members can put away money now, and when your child or grandchild or nephew or niece or whoever else reaches college age, he or she can withdraw the money tax-free and use it to fund a variety of higher education expenses. I also like to talk to my clients about taking out appropriate insurance coverage. That may include life insurance, health insurance, business interruption, or key person life insurance. These types of coverage also help ensure that your family is well taken care of if something were to happen. Perhaps you were to pass away or something just unforeseen happened. I like to also help my clients understand how much insurance they need, given their portfolio and plans for retirement, to cover expenses under different various scenarios that might happen, right? So we always talk about having health insurance and car insurance and renter's insurance and all that, right? But life insurance is a big part of that, making sure that if you were to pass away and perhaps you're the breadwinner, right, your family's not going to be lost at sea. Okay, so what about caring for your parents, right? You should research long-term care insurance that might help fund future health care costs for you, your spouse, your elderly parents. Now, this type of insurance can help cover the costs associated with nursing home care and assisted living facilities as well, and can even come with something called home health care that Medicare does not cost. So home health care is kind of like, my late grandfather-in-law, he needed home health care because he wasn't able to, go to the bathroom, feed himself. So he sort of had 24/7 in-house care. Long-term care insurance covers that. So there are many different strategies to consider when it comes to income needs over time, right? Annuities might be worth considering, or we often recommend that people segment their portfolio so that their investment strategy is appropriate for their time horizon. So someone who's 65 is probably going to invest with a different level of aggression and risk that someone who's 25 might, right? If you're 65, you don't necessarily have the time to deal with a 10-year market correction, or someone who's 25 sort of has a long time and can have that long-term horizon. So let's take a look at one of the areas in your life that will be a critical component of your individual wealth plan, your retirement. Whether you're starting your first job, taking a new role at your company, trying a new career path, or transitioning to retirement, not sure kind of the demographic of who's here today and who's going to be watching this. So we really want to cover the whole spectrum. It's important to take steps to be on track towards your goals for retirement. Now, women represent nearly half of the U.S. professional workforce, which is great. That's a number I love to see. And more than half of personal wealth in the U.S. is controlled by women, also a great statistic. And yet, only 12% of women feel confident that they'll be able to retire with a comfortable lifestyle. Right? This is according to the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies. So why is that? Considering that the average life expectancy for women today is just over 80 years, you need to plan for your own longevity. If you need to, if you live to be 90 years old, you have to think about, will your savings outpace inflation? Will you be able to afford the ever-rising cost of medical care? Will you be able to live comfortably if Social Security isn't a reliable source of income? And that might sound like a crazy thought, but there's a lot of rumors out there that Social Security is slated to run out in 2034. Now, as someone who has been paying into Social Security for almost 10 years, I would be pretty upset if there's no Social Security to pay me out in retirement. But the point is, you don't necessarily want to rely on the government helping us out. You want to take matters into your own hands and make sure you've got enough on your own side to prepare for that eventuality. Now, one of the most important things to remember when it comes to investing is that the earlier you start investing, the more opportunity you'll have to grow your investments. So why is it so early to start? Why is it so important to start early? It's simple. The concept of what we call compound interest or compounding. Compounding occurs when the money your investment earns is reinvested, producing additional earnings, or what we call earnings on earnings. And the effect of compounding can help a small regular investment sort of every month, every 2 weeks, every quarter, right, grow large because you have more money working for you over the years. So let's look at an example. We've got 3 people. We've got Eric, Alex, and Jessica. They all kind of start saving at different stages of their lives. And let's sort of see where they all come out in the end. All right, so we've got Eric. Eric says, you know what, I'm 30 years old. I'm going to put $3,000 away every year for the next 41 years for a total of $123,000 invested. Now, we're going to assume for the purposes of this illustration, his investments return about 8% annually every year. And so at that assumption, he's going to have, having put $123,000 in every year, $3,000 apiece, he's looking at $842,000 by age 70. Pretty good, almost 8 times the amount of money he put in. Okay, let's take a look at Alex. Alex says, you know what, I'm going to live my 20s and 30s. I'm going to just, live the life. I'm going to be a bachelor. I'm going to spend. I'm going to travel. I'm not going to start saving. But when I get to 40, I'm going to catch up to Eric. I'm going to start putting in $4,000 a year for the next 31 years. All right, and let's see where I shake out. So he puts in $4,000 a year for 31 years, not 41, 31 years. And by the age of 70, also assuming an 8% return, he's looking at almost $500,000. Okay, not bad. 124,000 turns into 500, 4 times your money. Not bad. Now let's look at Jessica. Jessica waits until age 50 to start investing. She's been focusing on raising her family and just other stuff, and she hasn't been thinking about saving. She's like, you know what, I'm 50. The kids are starting to come out of the house. I really got to start saving. She's like, let me play catch up. I'm going to put $5,000 away every year for the next 21 years from 50 to 70. She put $6,000 away every year from age 50 to 70 for a total of $126,000 invested. So she's actually putting more money away than Eric and Alex both did, but with a lot less time until she reaches age 70. And assuming her investments earn 8% every year, she's looking at $302,000 21 years later. All right, so again, she did pretty well, right? $126,000 turned into over $300,000. But when you compare the difference between just starting 10 and 20 years earlier, the difference is almost $200K between Jessica and Alex, and almost more than $500,000 between Eric and Jessica. So again, the point is, time can really make a difference. And now, of course, a systematic plan of investing does not ever ensure a profit or prevent a loss in a declining market. And there's no guarantee that your account balance will increase over time, right? When you would take on risk with investments, of course, it could go down. I'm just saying over the long term, over the last 100 years, the stock market in a diversified portfolio has returned about 10% annually every year. So if you invest in the right way, you're willing to take on a little bit of risk, there's a good chance if you do it the right way, you're going to look more like Eric, than someone who's actually lost money over time. So here's a couple other things you can do to prepare for your retirement at any stage of your career. If you're still working, you should be contributing enough to your company retirement plan to at least take full advantage of any match contributed by your employer. If you have a 401k, a 403b, or other tax-qualified account with a previous employer, carefully consider the options available to you, some of which might be to roll the assets into your new employer's 401k, 403b, or into what's called an IRA, an individual retirement account, which might help simplify your allocations and investments, because essentially with IRAs, you can pick any investments, any stocks, bonds, mutual funds, etc. With 401ks, 403bs, your employer gives you like a selection of 10 to 15 funds, but they're not that flexible, right? You can't sort of handpick things that you think are going to be good. You kind of have to take what they give you. So for former employers, oftentimes when you leave or you have a 401k sitting out there, you roll it over into an IRA and you can manage it a little bit more actively than you can a 401k. Now, if you have stock in your company, keep in mind that the more your stock accumulates, the riskier it can be because you've got more of it sort of concentrated in one individual company. So the question is the rest of your portfolio diversified enough to balance out the risk of such a concentrated position? So I work with clients, at Slack, HubSpot, Wayfair, if you've heard of some of these companies, and their share price has done incredibly well. And you've got all these people that have been given stock by their company, and now it makes up 50, 60, 70% of their net worth. When it comes to one company, all it takes is a bad headline, the CEO passes away, there's fraud in the accounting department, right? Something crazy happens, and the share price gets tanked, and all of a sudden their nest egg for retirement just gets completely depleted. So we want to make sure you're well diversified. Next thing to think about is it's important to determine your retirement lifestyle goals. This goes back to that earlier exercise we had. So when you document your goals, your plan should be, to quantify what it'll take to provide for your family, and when you should need that money available and how you're going to actually fund those personal goals that you have for yourself. So you want to think about what's your expected income during retirement, right? Add up Social Security. Think about if you're going to have any rental income, perhaps from an investment property or any pension that you might have, etc. Now, not everyone intends to stop working during retirement, so to speak. If you plan to work even part-time, that should be also considered into your wealth plan, right? Even working a little bit longer than you expected, right? Let's say you plan to retire at 60. If you're willing to work even a couple more years, semi-retired or working part-time, that can have a big impact in just accumulating more assets and deferring when you have to start pulling on your money in retirement. And finally, if you're someone who owns a business, right, putting a business plan in place to sort of think through the succession plan is going to help the continuity and ongoing vitality of your business. Right? In the U.S., this is a great stat. Women own 8 million or 40% of businesses out there with an annual economic impact of nearly $3 trillion. So strategies for creating a business succession plan include selling to a family member, giving to family, or selling to a third party. These are all things to think about if you are someone that's in a position to sell a business. Now, life is full of unexpected surprises and challenges, and some of these life events are difficult and sometimes even impossible to prepare for. So I'd like to take a few moments to look at 3 life events that are hard to think about and often hard to plan for. But because of this, the financial strategies and decisions you make in general need to be flexible enough to accommodate whatever life changes come about. The first one, unfortunately, involves the breakup of a marriage. Dividing assets fairly is typically more complicated than it was to combine them the first time when you got married. And it's easy to get caught up in the numbers and the emotions as you begin to work through some of these key questions. So I would say during this challenging time, review your will, insurance policies, retirement, brokerage, bank accounts to be clear on where you stand financially. Having a handle on your finances ahead of time can help make the equitable division of assets a much more seamless and painless process. It's also important to have good advice from a team of advisors that you trust to help you understand the value of what you have, the liquidity of your assets, and any new risks you might be facing. Now, it's also important to have a good support system in place to help you manage through the emotions and the financial challenges that come with the loss of a spouse. It may surprise you to know that the average age a woman becomes widowed is 59 years old, much younger than even I expected, according to the U.S. Census. A statistic that underscores the importance of creating a wealth plan that is flexible enough to accommodate life's ups and downs. Now, achieving balance after the death of a spouse, whether sudden or anticipated, takes time. There's no doubt about that. I've been very fortunate. God forbid, I haven't lost my spouse, but I've seen sort of what's happened to my grandparents who've each lost their spouse, right? And so what we'd recommend is taking sort of a 1-year decision-free zone, avoiding any major decisions that involve your home, any gifts to family members and charities, and making large investments, right? Take that year to just get your mind right. I know in the Jewish faith, of which I'm Jewish myself, we take what's called a mourning period of 11 months. And really, it's a great way to just sort of focus in on, the life that you lost, and making sure that you're in the right place to sort of forge ahead. And so again, I'm not saying don't live your life, but sort of in terms of big decisions, try to defer those until you've got that clear mind and you've kind of come to grips with what has happened. Now focus on, paying your bills, running your household, sort of keeping everything running as is, but try to avoid some of those big pictures that we're talking about. And when you're ready to start addressing some of those financial matters, if there's anything big that you've been thinking about, that's when I'd encourage you to assemble a team of trusted advisors who can help you sort of take those steps forward. So I'm talking about having an accountant, having an estate planning attorney, having a financial advisor who can kind of all guide you through those big life decisions that come when you do lose a spouse. Now, a wealth support team can also help make sure you have documents that are up to date for your protection and for the sake of those you love if something were to happen to you. proper estate planning, right? Planning for like the eventuality that when you pass away or when your spouse passes away, you're prepared and your family can inherit those assets. Proper estate planning serves a number of important goals. Number one, it can make sure your assets will be used as you had intended, not sort of some child perhaps goes rogue with the money and uses it for something that you never would have wanted them to use. It can help avoid unnecessary estate taxes. It could also help minimize family turmoil at a time when emotions are running high. Right? I don't know how many of you have been in this situation or have heard about friends, but when someone passes away, there's friction with the siblings, there's friction within the family because who gets what, who's inheriting what, and when you don't have that sort of lined up and everyone's on the same page, things can get very emotional very quickly. Now, we at Morgan Stanley believe it's vital for you to be an integral participant in the wealth planning process, not just defer that to someone else. It's important to have certain legal documents in place, including a will, a durable power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, and possibly a living trust. So work with your financial advisor and your wealth support team, that CPA, estate planning attorney, etc., to review your current estate plan and update it accordingly to give you that peace of mind for yourself and for your family. Now, we've just spent the past 30 minutes or so reviewing a number of key financial challenges that many, if not all of you, might be facing. And it may seem overwhelming, but you don't need to feel like you have to do this alone. The role of financial advisors in general is just to kind of show you how to put all these ingredients and these components together, right? Your own strategy should be tailored to your needs. I don't come on this and say, this is how we sort of paint with broad strokes. We want to make sure you get yourself a tailored approach that's a personalized and given to your circumstances and what you want to get out of your life. Now, some of the things we talked about here today might not be relevant to you. Some of them may be very relevant, or all of them might be relevant. So we want to make sure that you sort of are integrating all of those approaches and all the aspects that we talked about today, including your family, including yourself, including your business, including anything else that matters to you. So the first step to sort of successful wealth management, as we talk it, is just sort of figure out kind of where I am, where am I going, and how can I get from A to B. Now, I just want to talk about how sort of Morgan Stanley approaches this process, right? If let's say you decided, okay, you know what, Bradley, I want to get my life together. I want to get my personal finances in order. What does that process look like? And whether you work with a financial advisor or not, this is kind of our 4 steps that we like to talk about here at Morgan Stanley. The first step is the discover step. It's a conversation to help uncover your goals and understand your current financial picture. So again, what does money mean to you? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your goals. When do you want to retire? What concerns do you have? What keeps you up at night, right? That's the discovery process. Again, before we start coming up with ideas or things to do going forward, we want to understand, let's peel back the onion, go behind the curtain, and understand kind of ultimately what makes you tick. Next, advise. That's when you sort of think through various scenarios and assess whether certain strategies are appropriate for you to help meet those goals. The next step is implement. That's where you sort of think about, well, what different accounts do I need to set up? How many different portfolios do I need to have to achieve the different goals that I need in the right combination to meet those spending needs that you have, as well as investing in a tax-efficient manner. And then finally, the last step, which I think often gets overlooked, is tracking that progress. Because following your financial roadmap requires vigilance and flexibility, and we can help monitor your progress in real time, making adjustments according to your needs, life events, and changing market conditions. I see a lot of people that come to me and they say, Bradley, 20 years ago I had a financial plan done, but I'm looking back at it now and it's completely obsolete. It's just not even appropriate anymore. When you put a financial plan in place, it's good to have a plan. It's good to sort of stick to the plan, but it's okay to refine it here and there. If let's say you're planning on retiring at a certain age, but that assumed that your spouse was going to be living for the next 30 plus years, but they passed away prematurely, of course your plan has to change a little bit. Now the circumstances has changed, the income has changed a little bit. Now you have to adjust. You want to make sure that you're tracking your progress. Working with a trusted team can help you do that to make sure that you're keeping yourself accountable. Now, just in terms of, this is not meant to be any sort of solicitation, but I want to let you know that there's a lot of different ways that you can take care of your financial life cycle. It doesn't have to be just one or the other. It could be many, it could be none, it could be all of them. So think about, right, we talk about goals-based wealth management. We talk about lending, right? If you want to get a mortgage, you want to think about, what do I do with my checking account and my savings account? You want to set up legacy planning or trust and estate planning. You want to think about leaving some money towards a charitable organization. You want to think about protecting yourself with insurance, right? There's places that can help you do all of that. They're one-stop shop. Like I said, I'd be more than happy to have that conversation and see how we can be helpful to you. But this is really meant to give you a sense that you don't have to feel like you have to go to a million different places. Find somewhere that can take care of you, be a one-stop shop, and help take care of some of those goals and assuaging some of those concerns that you might have. So I always like to say, take 30 minutes to sort of think about the next 30 years, right? It doesn't have to be me necessarily. I'd like to think that I'm happy to take the time with any of you who'd like to have a conversation at no cost and no obligation, especially for people in the East Brunswick community. I love, chatting with many of you who have reached out to me after these seminars. But take 30 minutes to just take control of your financial future, right? Whether it's personal or professional or financial, right? These all are interwoven. And when we think about what causes the most stress in people's lives, the PwC Employee Wellness Survey came out and showed that money matters are by far the biggest stressor. So you want to make sure you take control of that and don't just push it off for that day when you realize, wow, I really kind of missed the boat on that. So you have my contact information right here. Kathy will send it out after the conversation as well. Feel free to just Google my name, Morgan Stanley. You'll see my website. You can put some time on the calendar with me, and I'd be more than happy to spend 30 minutes just kind of diving into whatever you want to talk about, like I said, with no pressure to do anything from there. So I'm going to turn the floor back over to Kathy. We'll do a little bit of Q&A on anything we talked about here today, or anything else related to personal finance that you've been thinking about.
Okay, so I think that's it for questions. So thank you, Bradley, for taking the time to present on this topic and for answering our questions. And the second webinar in this two-part series is Career Comebacks, Making the Most of Your Reentry to the Workforce, taking place next Friday, May 21st at 12 p.m. For more information or to register, check the library's event page at ebpl.org/calendar. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's talk, and take care and stay safe. Right, thank you.